We have finally made it to the last weapon guide. Well, major important weapon at least, with these Psycho Launchers. I don't anticipate this being a super popular weapon either, and it is definitely more of a supportive weapon over a flashy, big-hitting main weapon, but it can do some damage with the right setup in the right situations. As a support weapon, it's great, with access to some of the best auras in the game, and it does have access to topple locking as well on top of that, with some very useful debuffs too, especially with some of the new additions. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the Psycho Launchers, discussing its strengths and weaknesses, and showcasing how to use it. As always, if you enjoy guide content like this on Xenoblade Chronicles X, and want to see other guides and more Xenoblade content in general, please do be sure to subscribe to the channel because it does help me out so much. I'm getting very close to 100,000 subscribers and would really love to hit that milestone soon, and every little bit helps. Let's get started. If we take a look at the arts that the Psycho Launcher has to offer, you're going to notice two things very quickly. One is that it only has access to two ranged arts at all, only two yellow ranged arts that use the damage of the ranged attack of the Psycho Launchers. And second, you are going to notice that it has two melee TP arts that are both topple arts, meaning that this is going to be a very awkward weapon to get a lot of damage out of. Fortunately, the first art that we do have, Stellar Ray, is actually a fairly okay art for damage. It has 300% hit scaling with 5 total hits for 1500% total hit scaling. Now, obviously, this isn't the strongest art in the entire world, but it can be somewhat useful to actually get some damage out of the Psycho Launchers, and if we want to do any type of damage with the Psycho Launchers, this is pretty much going to be our one major option that we have available to us. We don't really have any other option that we can use, considering the other art is going to be one that is not going to be the best art for damage, sadly. This does inflict 150% more damage when you have an aura active, and considering Psycho Launchers has two of the best auras in the entire game, and we'll be using both of them in this video, this is a very easy conditional to hit. It also inflicts beam resistance down, but to be honest, if we were using beam damage for a Psycho Launchers kit, we would be here all day fighting some of these super bosses, so I'm just using Ether to make it a little bit easier and make things go a little bit faster. But if you want to do beam damage, you are absolutely able to do beam damage with this setup here. Next up, we have Astral Protection. This is one of the best auras in the entire game, in my opinion. This will just boost all of your resistances by a flat amount of 50, meaning if you have negative 25 ether resist, this will boost it all the way to positive 25. If you have positive 25 ether resist, it'll boost it all the way to 75, and this applies for all 6 attributes. So for gravity, thermal, electric, physical, beam, all of it. They all get boosted by a flat amount of 50, meaning this is actually one of the best auras you have for just keeping yourself alive. Especially because the HP recovery effect actually works pretty well with this aura as compared to other HP recovery effects in this game. Because it restores about 10% of your total health, at least about 995 from what I was noticing when I was using this earlier or something like that. And that's a pretty significant amount when you're not taking that much damage at all thanks to really high resistances. Meaning it's very easy to just keep yourself alive with this aura. And I think it's going to be one of the strongest and best auras in the game because of that. And it's going to be one of the auras that I show off in this video because it is very useful. The only possible negative about this is you are going to have to kind of spec into your build and use some of your slots on attribute resistances just to make sure you can survive all manner of attacks if you need to. So you won't be able to go as offensive on your build, but it's still a really nice aura regardless, and definitely something you should consider depending on what you are running. Next up, we have Lightning Cloak. This just grants electric resistance up, boosting your electric resistance even further. The most notable thing about this is that it is the only green art that the Psycho Launchers has access to, meaning it's going to be one of the most useful arts that you have regardless, unless you plan to run a decent amount of green arts from your melee weapon instead. But regardless, I think this is going to be a very useful art just to consider running because it's going to be the way to kind of trigger those ranged combos if you're running any kind of benefit or any kind of skill that gets benefit out of ranged combos, which I am going to be doing in this video with the Combo Gunner effect. Also works pretty well combined with Astral Protection just to give even more resistances so you can focus less on electric resistance when you're building your kit. Next up, we have Jet Stream. This is just deals ether damage guaranteed and also inflicts the stun effect. Stun is very nice just for kind of stopping what the enemy is doing for a specific amount of time, and it also combos very well with the topple effect from Starlight Kick. So topple locking, as we all know, is one of the strongest strategies in the game, and the Psycho Launchers can use topple locking as well. It is probably the worst weapon that has the ability to do this just because Starlight Kick is going to be a pretty slow method of toppling. It's a little bit longer animation art than other methods of toppling, so it can be a little annoying because of that. But it does have the stun art that goes along with it, and if you stun on a toppled enemy, it freezes the duration of the topple, meaning you can keep the enemy toppled longer and just kind of stun locked longer. So these work very well in tandem with each other, and Jetstream being a purple art means it's a pretty good way to restore your TP as well. So this means these are a really good combination of arts to consider running because topple locking is something else these Psycho Launchers can do, and if you are topple locking, you will need to use Astral Protection less, which means you'll get a lot of benefit out of doing this since you can focus more on more offensive build paths. You also get a slight damage bonus on toppled and stunned enemies, so that's very nice as well. But there are enemies that are immune to topple, and in those cases, Astral Protection is going to be very, very useful to have also. So it really just depends. The second ranged art you have is an electric locked arc that just can inflict the shock 3 effect, one hit, 1000% hit scaling, so it's not the weakest art in the world, and if you are able to actually inflict shock on an enemy, it may not even be a bad idea to spec into this because it can actually combo very well with one of your new arts you have access to, Conduction Rise, which will deal ether damage and boost blaze and shock damage inflicted on enemies. On its own, Shooting Star is definitely not a very powerful art, and you're going to get a lot more damage out of Stellar Ray most of the time, but if you are able to inflict that shock on enemies that aren't immune to shock, you could actually boost the damage of that shock with Conduction Rise 3.5 times, which is a pretty significant amount. Conduction Rise in general is actually a very, very useful art. It's one of the strongest new arts in the game just for being able to kind of boost the damage of blaze and shock effects, which can be very, very powerful with the very specific circumstances if you are able to set them up. I've already shown in a damage over time based strategy video that this can be the highest DPS strategy in the entire game, and Conduction Rise is kind of critical to that success for boosting the damage by blaze and shock by 3.5 times. That said, it is a very specific build and not something you're going to be able to rely on a lot of the time, so you're not going to be running it most of the time, but if you're able to kind of get a team together or kind of get in a situation where you can get a lot of blaze and shock damage, which is definitely not impossible, Shooting Star can definitely make that happen against certain enemies as well, for at least the shock part, you can get a lot of damage out of Conduction Rise, which can make it a very strong art and definitely an art to consider running. Next up, we have Tacit Censure. This just inflicts the virus debuff, which can stop enemies from using auto attacks or battle arts that are ranged, which can be somewhat useful, but a lot of the strongest tyrants are once again going to be immune to the virus effect. But if you are able to apply this debuff, it's a very useful debuff just for stopping basically half of the enemy's damage output, and maybe more depending on what enemy you are fighting. All in all, a very situational debuff. If it works, it can be good. Otherwise, you're probably better running something else. Next up, we have Gravity Lunge. This is also a topple art. However, this one is even slower than Starlight Kick, and it also doesn't have the immediate reuse bonus effect, meaning you're not going to get as much benefit out of it. The one advantage it might have over Starlight Kick is that it is a decently high damage TP art. 300% hit scaling with 10 total hits, meaning it can do, and it also has the tertiary bonus effect of 400% extra damage, meaning it can do somewhat decent damage despite being a melee art. Even if, as long as you are building your potential, you can actually do some decent damage with this, especially if you focus on triggering those melee combos. The topple would just be a bonus in that sense, and you can actually get some damage out of Gravity Lunge in that case. The main problem is going to be that it is locked to the Gravity attribute, meaning you're not going to be able to get ether damage out of this, meaning you're still going to get a lot more damage out of Stellar Ray than using Gravity Lunge in most situations, especially if you're trying to use the Cycle Launchers for damage, and you want to run the Core Crusher skill. Regardless, I can see some use for this, but it is definitely the inferior art for topple locking in particular. It would definitely be used if you want to actually get some damage out of these Cycle Launchers for a potential-based build instead, and it's particularly if you want to try to use gravity damage. And that is not impossible. You can probably definitely do that, so do not let me stop you if you want to actually try that, I mean. And then next up, we have Dual Dynamo, another really fantastic aura that the Cycle Launcher has available to it. This one boosts your melee attack, your ranged attack, and your potential. So all three of the most important stats in the game for damage. You can use this on any setup to be really, really strong damage-wise. If you want to boost your melee attack weapon and you don't have a good aura to do that, you can use the Cycle Launchers and boost your melee attack with Dual Dynamo, which is very, very nice to have access to. It also allows you to topple lock with these Cycle Launchers and just kind of boost your own damage with Dual Dynamo that way, so you can get the maximum benefit out of it as well if you're running these Cycle Launchers as a supporting weapon. And if you are trying to use the Cycle Launchers for damage, this is going to be the way to boost your ranged attack, and it can boost it a pretty significant amount. I was getting a lot more damage out of using Dual Dynamo compared to Astral Protection, a lot more, especially with the setup that allows you to topple lock. So I think the Dual Dynamo, if you're trying to try to get any type of damage out of the Cycle Launchers, the best bet you're going to have is going to be using this and topple locking the enemy rather than trying to use Astral Protection. However, Astral Protection is still a great aura as well if you just want to keep yourself alive or if the enemy is immune to topple, as I said earlier. But they both have their situational uses, and I'll be showing both in this video regardless. And then finally, we have Heroic Tail. I will be honest, this is pretty much just a farming art. This is an art you equip if you want to raise the enemy's level and their treasure rank. So if you're able to raise the enemy's level, you might get them into the next treasure chest pool if they are a higher level enemy. And if you raise their treasure rank, obviously you have a higher chance of getting that really good gear as well. Outside of that, pretty much every enemy worth anything is going to be immune to control, so you're not going to get the most benefit out of it otherwise. But if you want to farm enemies, this can be a pretty useful art to have. And if you are running it with a knife, you can also combo it with Servant Sacrifice, because it'll be a better control art than Brainjack, since doesn't cost any TP, and it can be a pretty useful art just for getting better treasure as well. So in that sense, it can be pretty useful. Outside of that, I have ran both the dual swords and the knife as the supporting weapon for this video, because they both have pretty different good skill sets. The knife has chrome armor, which can boost physical resistance. This kind of combos well with Astral Protection. Can be a good way to boost some of your resistances even further. Smooth Recovery is a really nice art just for kind of granting evasion up, and it's a really fast green art just for comboing into your other abilities. Also builds overdrive count a little easier, and also gives you a lot of duration if you have a bunch of party members. Black Butterfly also lowers ether resistance, which is really, really good if you are trying to do as much damage as possible with an ether-based build. So that is a good thing to consider running here. Dual Dynamo is going to be better than full specs most of the time, but I think they have a lot of the same values, so if you are running this, you could consider running full specs as well if you really need the ether resistance over what Dual Dynamo has to offer. But if you're running the dual swords, you'll probably want Dual Dynamo instead. The dual swords is great just for keeping up overdrive easier, since you'll have access to Blood Sacrifice and Side Slash, which are really good ways to kind of keep your TP up. So that's one of the reasons it can be a pretty useful supporting weapon as well. It really just depends. Both have really good weapons you can consider running with 4 slots that you can get from Chapter 13.3, or just with the knife, you can have an Appendage Crusher knife, which can also give you a decent amount of damage. The skill set changes slightly depending on if you are running Astral Protection or you're focusing more on a topple locking build. Core Crusher is going to stay no matter what for the setup I am using. Once again, if you do not want to use Core Crusher or do not want to use ether damage, you can absolutely replace this with something else. You do not have to run Core Crusher. And if you want to focus on the gravity damage, you can absolutely do that as well by just kind of increasing your gravity damage. Boosted bullets will boost our ranged attack. We're going to be focused on ranged attack damage since we don't have any good TP arts, and our highest damage art is just going to be the ranged attack setup here with Stellar Ray. And then, of course, Combo Gunner will just boost our damage by 125% when we trigger those ranged combos, meaning we can get a lot of additional damage just as an additive bonus effect here by having Combo Gunner available to us. Secondary Accelerator is also going to be pivotal for using our strongest arts as much as possible, especially because Stellar Ray is our only really source of damage, so we want to make sure that we have as much cooldown reduction as we can to use that as often as we can. And then finally, if you are doing the topple-based build, I always recommend using long topple to keep the enemy toppled even longer, especially because Starlight Kick has a really annoying animation and cooldown. So you want to make sure you're getting as much benefit out of that ability as you can every time you use it. If you are not running the topple locking setup, I would recommend running the trigger happy so you can use your ranged combos even more often or your ranged arts even more often, especially combined with some of the skills and abilities that I have. Obviously, if you want more damage boost, you have access to something like Night Vision, which can boost damage by 100% at nighttime, so that can be very beneficial. And obviously, if you're not running Core Crusher, you have room for other abilities as well. If you do not have access to an overdrive count up on your current skill set, you could consider running Phantom Counter as well, which will boost your count by 12 when you activate overdrive. I considered running it on one of these setups as well, since I don't have any overdrive count up on my current build, and I was thinking it might help me build it a little bit faster, but I decided I didn't really need it, so I'm not running it on this specific setup, but it can be a nice skill to have also. For actual ground gear setup, if you are running the knife, you're going to want an Appendage Crusher knife, just for getting as much damage as possible, so you can kind of save on your skill slots as well. And if you are running the dual swords, you can consider running the Serment dual swords from Chapter 13.3, which has the 4 skill slots available on it. You can also get a knife with 4 skill slots available on it, so you can use that as a replacement for the Appendage Crusher. It is also possible, but very, very rare, to actually get an Appendage Crusher knife with 4 slots in Chapter 13.3 by farming some of the enemies there, but that is a really, really annoying method that I do not recommend doing, but it is a possibility at the very least. Regardless, you are going to want to run 5 Appendage Crushers total. You can get 1 from your headgear if you're running an eye patch. That can be very beneficial to have. Otherwise, you're probably going to want to run 4 total on your weapons as far as augment slots and on your gear itself. Like I said, the knife can automatically come with 1, which is very useful. As far as my ranged attack weapon here, I believe you can get a ranged attack with, or an ether-based weapon with ranged attack up, but I'm just running one that has ranged accuracy up to make sure my accuracy is better for some of the higher evasion enemies. And it also has ether attack plus, which also is a decent source of damage boost, even if it's not quite as good as a ranged attack up effect. For all of my other augment slots on weapons, I'm just running ranged attack up just to get as much ranged attack damage as I possibly can. Warrior's Eye Patch we already talked about. This is mainly for the Appendage Crusher, so we hit the 5 total Appendage Crushers. I am also running Aura Rapid Cooldown as my augments in every single slot here for the topple locking build. This is just so I can use Stellar Ray as much as possible. We want to be able to use that one art as much as possible since it's our main and only real source of damage on this kit. So if we want to do damage with the Psycho Launchers, we're going to need to boost Stellar Ray as much as we possibly can. Outside of that, I am just boosting my ranged attack as much as possible with my other set here. Reginald Norak will boost my ranged attack even further. Ultra Infinite Yeast will boost ranged attack. Ultra Infinite Yeast R will also boost ranged attack. And I also have some additional useful traits like Max TP up, Extend Overdrive, which also helps kind of keep Overdrive going. I also have a Back Attack Plus if I can actually manage to attack from behind on certain enemies. And then finally, I'm running the Mother God Sabatons. This does not have ranged attack up on it. You can run a shop gear with ranged attack up. But I mainly was running this to just get the 20 thermal resistance when I was using the Astral Protection set. Just to kind of make sure I was reaching certain thresholds on my resistances, so I had to make sure that I wasn't going to die to certain attacks. So that's the main reason I was running that. It was mainly for the Astral Protection set. If you want to get more ranged attack, you can absolutely get a shop piece of gear that has ranged attack up, which is going to be more useful than Mother God Sabatons if you want to get as much damage as possible. If you are running the Astral Protection set, you're going to want to replace these Aura Rapid cooldowns, or at least a few of the Aura Rapid cooldowns, with resistance ups. You want at least one electric resistance up, at least one ether resistance up, maybe two for that one, at least one physical resistance up, I would say, just to kind of make sure that you are doing as much damage as you can, while also having the resistances to survive any kind of attack from the strongest enemies in the game. So kind of keep that in mind and definitely consider running those just to kind of get the maximum benefit of the resistances to make sure you're hitting thresholds of like 70 or higher on all important resistances. That is going to cover it for the setup, so let's get into how to use the Psycho Launchers practically and finally wrap up these weapon guides. So the main weakness I have on the current build is I just don't have a really great way of building overdrive count. That's not really the biggest deal in the world. I just want to make sure I can kind of keep the topple lock more than anything early on here, especially since I'm showing off the topple lock build first. So I'm going to just go ahead and get the topple going, and I'm going to use one singular Mega Intensifier since I had to topple twice since I didn't get the first proc of it off. And from here, I should be pretty much good as far as just kind of keeping over overdrive and just kind of making sure I get to maximum count here. It's going to be a little slow to start off here as I'm trying to build up the overdrive count. I got to make sure I can keep the topple on. I'm going to use the stun whenever I can from Jetstream, and I'm going to be doing what I can to build up my overdrive count. I also have some green arts here that are kind of carryovers here that I didn't need as much, but I did want to keep Lightning Cloak. That's my only green art that I can use into Stellar Ray to get both damage and just to kind of get the most benefit out of my range combo boost from my skill, Combo Gunner. So once again, just mainly try to keep your topple lock up. You can see how slow Starlight Kick is with that, so it's a little annoying because of that. And then use Jetstream as a way to just kind of help stun the enemy and kind of keep it topple locked longer. And then Green Art into Stellar Ray is going to be our best way of probably building count with the current setup. This will give 10 count total. You can also use a Green Art into Black Butterfly for 8 count. Smooth Recovery can give a lot of count if you actually have party members, and that can also be really useful for duration as well, so you don't need to reactivate Overdrive or use a Mega Intensifier or anything like that. But regardless, once you kind of get to this point, once you kind of get higher than 80 count, it becomes a lot easier. I just was basically I would just activate my aura, make sure I had ether resistance down from Black Butterfly, and then it's just a matter of canceling Stellar Ray into my stun art, and I can just keep going from there to do a lot of damage. So that's what we're going to be doing now that I've got 96 count. I'm going to topple him one more time here, I believe, or maybe 2 more times. I'm going to make sure I have my aura active, Dual Dynamo, use Stellar Ray. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to use Black Butterfly here. Doesn't matter if I don't cancel into it from a yellow attack. I mainly just want the ether down. Then I'm going to topple, Jetstream, and then I'm going to start spamming Stellar Ray. So Stellar Ray into Jetstream, Stellar Ray into Jetstream, and that should end the fight from here, from the current setup that I currently have. So this could have been probably a little bit faster if I would have started this part of the fight earlier. I didn't really need maximum count to do this, but I just want to kind of make sure that I could get the max count and just kind of show off the build to its maximum potential here. So you can see this kind of alternation here with the Aura Rapid cooldown does end up being very beneficial to do a decent amount of damage there. It is definitely not a bad build. It just takes a little bit to get going if you don't have overdrive count up or a way to really efficiently build overdrive. And it's definitely going to do a lot more damage, unfortunately, compared to the other setup here, which I'm about to show off now, which is the Astral Protection set. The Astral Protection is really good for keeping you alive, though. I, once again, am kind of cheating a little bit and using a Gossamer Cannon to lower ether resistance here to just kind of get some benefit out of that. So since I don't have the knife anymore, since I'm going to show off the dual swords here a little bit. So dual swords do have upper hand, a way to boost your critical power. Then they also have side slash and blood sacrifice, as I said, a way to keep TP very easily. So you don't have to use Mega Intensifiers or anything like that to keep overdrive going. But you are going to see here the negative of this is since I am not running dual dynamo, I am going to be doing less damage with Stellar Ray overall, which is definitely going to be a big weakness of this. So that is definitely going to be the big problem here as far as actually doing damage. And that is going to make the fight just kind of end up being a lot slower regardless. But you're also going to see that I'm not really going to be taking any damage at all from a lot of these attacks. Or if I do take some damage, it's not going to be that much at all, because Astral Protection is very good for just limiting the amount of damage that you end up taking. And that is one of the strongest benefits of Astral Protection here. It might be slower, but it works against pretty much every enemy, even the ones immune to topple, and that can still be very beneficial here. And this build would also work with the knife, as I kind of already mentioned. If you want to run the knife for Black Butterfly instead of trying to use the Ares 90 to lower ether resistance, you absolutely can do that as well. Astral Protection is just a really good aura for just not taking much damage at all. And like I said, you can also see just the amount I'm healing. It looks like it's over 1,000 actually. So yeah, it's about 10% of your health. So yeah, 1,074. I have 1,750 health. That's about 10%. It's like slightly lower than 10%. I don't know exactly why it's slightly lower than 10%, but it's slightly lower than 10%. But you can also see that this fight is definitely going to be taking a lot longer, the setup. I'm trying to cancel into Stellar Ray as much as I can with my combo gunner and trigger happy by using the lightning cloak every time, but right before Stellar Ray, if I can, or at least a ranged dart right before Stellar Ray. But it's not going to be doing as much damage, unfortunately. Even with the Aura Rapid cooldown there, it is still not going to be doing as much damage. And once he activates his Aura here, the fight is going to slow down even more, unfortunately. But it will eventually win. I don't want to sit here all day and just kind of show you how this works, though, so I think we'll kind of fast forward here. And show that Astral Protection also combos pretty well with the Knight because you have access to Chrome Armor for physical resistance up, meaning you don't have to run the physical resistance augment if you don't want to, and you still have the Lightning Cloak, which grants the electric resistance up as well. So you have access to resistance up effects as well. You can also get ether resistance up from, I believe, one of your arts also, which can be pretty useful. So you have access to basically everything that you need to take a little bit less damage with the knife, which can be very nice. And you also have the ether as a resistance down effect on your Black Butterfly to make sure you do more damage to Gradivis more consistently. But otherwise, it's going to have the same problems as the previous build with the dual sword. You're still going to be doing less damage overall compared to something like dual dynamo and just focusing on topple locking instead. Which is the unfortunate reality of Astral Protection. It is a really good art, really good for keeping yourself alive, but it's definitely going to be less damage than using dual dynamo. So that is the one major weakness of it. It does suck that Stellar Ray is your only real damaging art because if you're trying to spec into it, it can be a little annoying to try to get the most damage and benefit out of it. But if you are able to actually get that damage and actually take advantage of it, it can be really, really powerful at the very least. As I said, though, the fight basically plays out pretty much the exact same at this point. Just I focus more on Jetstream than any kind of topple locking here to make sure I can get my TP back, since that's my main way of getting TP back, since I don't have Side Slash here. So Jetstream's going to be spammed a lot more often, which does apply the stun effect to Gradivis, which does mean he gets stunned for at least a little bit of time in this fight at the very least. I think that is probably going to cover it for this video, though I don't really see the need to show any more than this, since the fight is just going to be really, really slow regardless, and I think you kind of get the point at this point. So I hope you learned something from watching this. Thank you guys for bearing with me for all of the weapon guides. I still have a few more videos planned for this. I do have an party member tier list planned, a few more guides outside of that, so please look forward to that. And if you did enjoy the video, please do be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends who are new to the game, and of course, thank you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and hopefully I will see you all back here soon.